Taxes are an unfortunate fact of life for the majority of people who live and work in the modern world, but they are also one of the most vital components of any economy anywhere in the world. Effective taxation has the potential to grow societies while failing to do so. Our roads, schools, parks, emergency services, social welfare, and everything else are supported by taxes. These services are fundamental components of contemporary society. Without taxes, we wouldn't have these, and life would be a complete mess. So, are taxes necessary? Well, maybe not always. Welcome to the Financial Flow. Please like and subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay up on our latest videos. Taxes have a significant function, but there are other mechanisms that are, theoretically, could accomplish the same goal. It's critical to comprehend exactly what taxes accomplish and why we must pay them. A government uses taxes to generate revenue to pay for its expenses. If a government is unable to collect enough taxes to cover these costs, it will do what any other person would do and take on debt in order to temporarily live above their means. In our modern economies, the cycle of governmental fiscal policy is oversimplified in this way. Everyone should be able to understand it. If we don't pay our taxes, the government will either have to stop providing the services that keep society running, or it will accrue ever-increasing debt and eventually go bankrupt. But this argument is more complex than that. Some economic schools of thought, not to mention political ideologies, favor lower taxation and lower spending. Their opponents will contend that the best course of action is to increase spending and taxation. Both sides will contend that their approach will result in the greatest economic growth overall. Taxes will continue to exist in both scenarios. Therefore, it is crucial to ask why people pay taxes now. Taxes, according to some, are similar to a monthly subscription to modern society. The real justification is that going unpaid for taxes results in imprisonment. The United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Monaco, and Brunei are just a few examples of countries with non-taxed economies. There were no federal income taxes in the USA before 1913. Thus, this provided a simple response to the question of whether taxes are necessary. These nations would respond with a resounding no to that. The first is that these nations do indeed levy taxes. However, they do not levy income taxes. Monaco's government continued to receive funding from taxes. This is perfect for these tourist-oriented countries because it brings in money for the government from people who are just passing through, as opposed to income taxes, which require people to live and work there. Alternative taxes are a common practice in many nations and have numerous benefits. Singapore, for instance, still levies income taxes, but they are very minimal. Instead, it imposes taxes on things that necessitate spending by the government. Singapore has a low income tax rate, but to make up the difference, the government levies a car ownership tax. Purchasing and registering a vehicle in Singapore can easily cost 5 times as much, depending on the car. Like how much it does in the US, the Singaporean government now has the funding available to pay for these public goods. You won't have to pay if you don't need or want to drive a car. This is a fair system in many ways. Beyond this, it reduces traffic in the small country because fewer people drive because it is so expensive. This system is not without issues though. Many people won't be able to afford a car when it costs as much as a house. For some people, driving is simply a necessity. They may work in a field where driving is essential. They may have a special transportation needs, or they may reside in remote areas without convenient access to public transportation. Singapore still levies taxes, so while it may be interesting, it is irrelevant. The other nations that get away with not having taxes have a different source of income. The majority of the time, it's natural resources. These nations can still offer all the amenities one would expect by replacing tax revenue with oil revenue. Even Alaska is exempt from the requirement to collect state taxes. In fact, they go above and beyond by distributing a portion of the oil revenue to the state's citizens. The issue with this, of course, is that a nation needs natural resources in order to replace tax revenue with resource revenue. The majority of nations' natural resources, in theory, belong to the citizens of those nations. Taking away raw materials to sell is the same as taking away money. In both situations, a government is robbing a citizen of property to pay for public expenses. Here, the assumption that the governments even require revenue is the problem. People may occasionally ponder why the government doesn't simply print more money. Inflation is only one aspect of it. There is something much deeper. There isn't much that can stop a government like the US from creating money out of thin air to cover all of its expenses. This is what it already does logically. Indefinitely more money would enter the economy if people kept printing money. Like any other asset, cash's value is based on supply and demand. This only becomes confusing because we typically express an item's value as a nominal cash value. There are some interesting thought experiments surrounding the concept of completely unrestrained capitalism. The first is regarding impairments. A person who is born with a disability or acquires one will be less productive and less economically valuable as an individual in a society that is purely capitalistic. Although it may seem harsh, it is true. In the worst cases, they might not be able to make enough money to pay for their own food and clothing, so they would simply pass away. Even the most ardent proponents of free markets would erroneously assume that this would be a bad thing, which is a huge assumption to make here. What other options are there then? Insurance. Social Security is kind of the price we pay to guarantee that we won't go hungry if we lose our job, become ill, or injured. This service might be offered by an insurance provider. This kind of person would probably pay a higher insurance premium in our fictitious anarcho-capitalist society. But if they lost their job, they could have chosen a policy that offers them a higher payout amount. Beyond that, if you're willing to take a chance, you can simply refuse to pay and save the extra cash. Or you can really hope that you never lose your job. If you hadn't guessed it by now, this business is essentially just the government with taxes and more procedures. An amazing theory to investigate is anarcho-capitalism, but most of the time, you revert to the previous state as you go. The reality is that most goods and services are best provided by businesses with a profit-making goal, just as some goods and services are best provided by governments merely trying to hold into power. Nobody likes paying taxes, and that isn't just because it takes money out of their wallet. Many people like making purchases. People don't like paying taxes because it means taking money out of their own pockets to fund something they wouldn't otherwise buy. Although the people who pay taxes are frequently not directly benefited, society as a whole is materially improved by tax dollars. We will require a collective organization to supply those goods as long as it is acknowledged that there are goods that private businesses would not offer in a market. That is competitive, and as long as those goods are valuable. Governments are the most well-known collective organizations in the world, and taxes are the best tool at their disposal for generating revenue. Alternatives exist, but they have drawbacks as well. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Have a good one.